The bags were heavier than usual. I'd picked up flour, potatoes, eggs, and a few things Mallory always said we were out of, even though I rarely touched them. Almond milk, frozen blueberries, some oat-based snack bars. I carried them up the porch steps, set one bag on the top step to fish out my keys, then stopped. The lock was silver. Brand new. Too new. Mine had been brass scratched at the edges, a little loose in the heat. Silas had installed it himself the summer after Connor turned 13. I stared at the silver one now, shiny, seamless, soulless. I tried my key anyway. It didn't fit. I turned it harder. Nothing. I tried again. The metal caught and pushed back. The door didn't budge. At first I thought maybe there had been a break-in. Maybe they'd called a locksmith for safety. My hand hovered near the bell. I pressed it once, waited, knocked twice. Still nothing. The air was thick, damp in that way. Coastal springs always are, like the weather can't decide whether it wants to turn or linger. I leaned closer to the side window near the stairs, trying not to look like a trespasser. That's when I saw her, Mallory. Reflected in the hallway mirror, legs stretched across the couch, one arm over the backrest like she owned it. My mug, blue ceramic with a chip on the lip, the one Silas gave me on our 20th, rested in her hand. She didn't move. She didn't look toward the door. She just sat there, calm as you please. My phone buzzed. Connor, we've decided it's best if you give us space. Hope you understand. That was it. No punctuation, no apology, no explanation. I stepped back onto the porch, stared at the handle again, then looked down at the bag of groceries still sitting by my feet. I didn't touch them. I didn't try again. Instead, I walked back to the car and sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. It was never meant to be a permanent thing. 6 months ago, Connor had shown up at the door with a sheepish smile and an overnight bag. Mallory was still in the car, arms crossed, sunglasses on. Their lease had fallen through. The new place wouldn't be ready for a few weeks, maybe 8, 10 at most. Just a bridge, he said. A favor. Something temporary. I remember unlocking the front door and saying, "Well, you know where everything is." That was my first mistake, assuming they still did. The house isn't large. It's modest, square, and steady like Silas was. He laid the tile in the kitchen himself. We picked the stone out back of a supply lot in Pender County when no one was watching. Paid it off 12 years ago. Every inch of that place had some part of our hands on it. I gave them the master bedroom. Figured Mallory would want the closet space. I moved into the room Silas used to nap in when his knees got bad. Cleared out drawers, boxed up my winter sweaters, put half my books in the attic. Mallory never asked me to do any of that. She just assumed I would. Things started changing slowly. The green and cream rug in the living room disappeared one afternoon. In its place was something shaggy and gray that smelled faintly of plastic. Then came new curtains. Light blocking, she said. More modern. She swapped out my coffee maker for a stainless steel one that lit up blue and made a noise like a fax machine. I found mine stuffed under the sink, still half full from the day before. No one asked. No one explained. I let it happen. Some mornings, I woke up to find Connor gone and Mallory at the dining table with her laptop using my favorite teacup as a pencil holder. She never looked up. She never said good morning. The house felt quieter than when I lived alone. And now, as I sat in the car with the groceries turning warm beside me, I knew the only thing louder than silence was being locked out of the place you paid for. I parked 2 blocks down under the shade of a sycamore that had outgrown the sidewalk. The car idled for a minute before I shut it off. I hadn't planned where I was going, just not back to the porch where my name no longer meant anything. I pulled the seatbelt across my chest and sat there, windows cracked, watching the light shift between the leaves. Across the street, Mrs. Elgin was watering her front hedges, her sun visor crooked, and her elbow locked like always. We used to wave. I kept my head low. I don't know how long I sat there. The groceries were still in the back, sweating through the paper bags. I told myself I'd drive somewhere soon. I just needed a minute. It was her grandson, Tyler, who came up to the car window. He held out a flyer. "They're advertising your place, Miss Ardell," he said, casual as anything. "We saw it online." I took it. A full-color printout, glossy and creased at the corner. My living room, my curtains, my old pine bookshelf in the background. Private retreat near the river. Peaceful, updated space. Owner, not on site. The listing had been live for 3 days. There were 5 photos. One of the back garden, one of the breakfast nook, one of the guest bathroom with my blue quilt folded across the tub like some kind of prop. I didn't say anything, just nodded. Tyler walked off, earbuds in. I kept looking at that flyer, like if I stared long enough something would unhappen. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This wasn't stress or miscommunication. This had been arranged, posed, staged. Connor knew. He had to have known. I folded the paper once, then again, slipped it into the glove compartment like it might burn a hole in my lap if I held it too long. The keys were still in the ignition. I didn't turn them. Instead, I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the heat settle in around me. And when I finally opened them again, I knew what I needed to do. I didn't sleep. I drove until the sky began to thin, then parked a block away and watched the house come back into focus as the morning changed color. At some point, I took the folded deed from my purse and smoothed it on the passenger seat. My name was still there. Clear. Unshared. I didn't ring the bell. I walked around the side of the house and sat on the back steps, the ones Silas had reinforced with extra brackets, because he said things that held people up should never wobble. At 6:45, I called Ernie. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he answered on the second ring. "Can you come now?" I asked. He didn't ask why. He said he'd be there at 7. Ernie pulled up in his old truck with the dented tailgate and the toolbox that rattled when he shut the door. He took one look at the new lock and shook his head. "That's not yours," he said. "No," I replied. "It isn't." He worked quietly. The sound of metal loosening then lifting away felt heavier than it should have. When he handed me the new keys, they were warm from his palm. I paid him. We didn't linger. I opened the door. The house smelled wrong, clean but not familiar. Shoes lined the hallway that weren't mine. A coat rack where my umbrella used to hang. Boxes stacked in the corner with Mallory's handwriting on the labels. Her things were everywhere, settled in like they'd always belonged. I moved slowly. I didn't rush. I folded clothes the way I always had. I matched pairs of shoes. I stacked handbags with their straps tucked in so they wouldn't crease. I used boxes from the garage and bags from the pantry. Nothing thrown. Nothing damaged. By mid-morning, the porch began to fill. By noon, it was complete. I stood at the doorway, looked once more through the house, then closed the door behind me and waited. The knock came at 9:11 sharp enough to rattle the glass in the doorframe. Then a voice. Mallory's. Tight, high, and already angry. "Ardell, what is this? Why are our things out here?" The doorknob shook. Another knock, louder this time. "Are you in there?" Then Connor's voice, quieter, hesitant. "Mom?" I opened the door without a word. Mallory stood in leggings and a windbreaker, hair still damp from a morning shower. Connor stood behind her, hands in his jacket pockets, like a boy caught out after curfew. Mallory's mouth twisted. "You can't just throw our stuff out." I looked past her at the porch, 2 suitcases, a few plastic tubs, her laptop bag, a folded blanket. Everything packed cleanly. Not a thing out of place. "They're not thrown out," I said. "They're not on the lawn." They're on my lawn. Connor stepped forward. Mom, come on. This isn't how we handle things. 15 minutes, I said, not moving from the doorway. If there's anything else you need, get it now. Mallory crossed her arms. You're overreacting. I said nothing. I didn't blink. Connor sighed. This is really unnecessary. I waited. The seconds stretched. Finally, they moved. Together, but not in sync. Mallory grumbled under her breath as she opened boxes and double-checked zippers. Connor lingered at the base of the steps, glancing at me, then away like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. When Mallory was done, she hoisted her bag with a grunt and muttered, "You've lost it." I didn't reply. Connor paused his hand on the railing. You could have just talked to us. I looked at him then. Fully. You could have talked to me before you changed the locks. He dropped his gaze. They carried their things to the car in 2 trips. No one offered help. No one said goodbye. When the trunk slammed shut and the engine started, I stood just inside the door, one hand on the frame, steady as ever. I waited until the car disappeared around the corner before closing the door again. I didn't lock it. Not yet. Instead, I walked to the back drawer to find the envelope Silas had left me. The house was quiet again. Not in the heavy, grief-laced way it had been after Silas passed, but in a different way. An earned quiet. A returned quiet. I made tea without thinking. Filled the kettle, waited for the whistle, poured it into the old mug with the crack in the handle. Not the one Mallory liked. The one that belonged to no one but me. I sat at the kitchen table and waited for the water to cool. My hands found the edge of the folder before my mind caught up. Bottom drawer, left side, where I kept the things that mattered. The deed, the tax records, the will. Silas's handwriting on a post-it. Keep this safe, Ard. I opened the folder. The deed was still there, crisp and formal, my name printed in bold. No co-signers, no added lines. I'd kept it all these years like a backup key to something I never thought I'd need to unlock again. The will was in the next sleeve. It hadn't been touched since the year Silas died. A simple document. Too simple now. Default to Connor. House savings pension. I stared at the pages. Not with anger, not with sadness, just clarity. Like walking into a room and realizing the furniture's been rearranged in your absence. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I hadn't called since the final paperwork after Silas's funeral. The receptionist remembered my name. We scheduled an appointment for Thursday at 10. She asked if I needed anything else. No, I said. Just revisions. I hung up and left the folder open on the table. No ceremony, no drama. Just facts like I'd learned to type back in the courthouse, one clean sentence at a time. I didn't call Connor. I didn't tell him what I was doing. He'd made his decisions. Now I was making mine. I finished my tea, rinsed the mug, and opened the hallway closet to gather the rest of what they'd left behind. The next thing I needed to do would require a clean house and an even cleaner list. The office smelled like old carpet and printer ink. Mr. Hensley looked older than I remembered, more lines at the corners of his eyes, a little less hair at the back, but he was just as precise. He flipped through the pages, slowly confirming each step with a nod. Deed secured, trust finalized, power of attorney reassigned, medical directives updated. I initialed where he pointed, signed my name where it mattered. We got to the letter last. He read it back to me once. I didn't change a word. This property is no longer open to you. He asked if I wanted to add anything else, clarify, soften, explain. No, I said. It's clear. He slid the documents into a folder, clipped it shut, and handed me a copy. I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked out into the bright morning with everything finally in my name and only mine. At home, I didn't rush. I pulled down the thick gray curtains Mallory had put up in the living room and folded them slowly, deliberately, like I was letting something go in layers. I found the old floral ones in the linen box in the hall. Slightly faded one panel, shorter than the other, but they were mine. I rehung them without measuring, just the way I used to, crooked at the hem, but honest. Then I boiled eggs. I ate them with salt and pepper and a single slice of toast sitting by the back window where the light came in just right. I didn't think about what they'd say when the letter arrived. I didn't wonder if they'd be surprised. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry. I felt still. Later, I pulled out a notepad and wrote down the small things I wanted to put back in order: the garden hose, the pantry labels, the loose handle on the laundry door. I wasn't reclaiming anything. I was just living in what was already mine. And before I went to bed that night, I opened the closet to start sorting what would go and what would stay. Connor came the next afternoon. Alone. No Mallory in the passenger seat. No phone pressed to his ear. No rehearsed confidence. He stood on the porch, holding a small paper bag, like he wasn't sure whether to knock or leave it at my feet and walk away. I opened the door before he raised his hand. "Hi," he said. His voice was careful. 15 minutes, I replied, stepping aside just enough for him to enter. He nodded and came in, setting the bag on the kitchen counter. It smelled like coffee and sugar, something from the place on Front Street he used to stop at on his way to school. I didn't comment. We sat across from each other at the table. He kept glancing toward the hallway, as if expecting Mallory to appear and correct him. "You really changed the will?" he asked. I nodded. He swallowed. "That seems drastic." "I changed what was automatic," I said. "That's all." He rubbed his hands together, eyes down. Things got out of hand. The lock thing, I didn't think it would go that far. Mallory was under a lot of stress. Money's been tight. We were just trying to figure things out. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. "She didn't mean to hurt you," he added. "And I thought you'd understand. You always do." That last part landed heavier than the rest. "I'm not cut out," I said quietly. "I'm just not automatic anymore." He looked up, then startled. "What does that mean?" "It means I don't exist as a convenience," I replied. "I don't get rearranged when life gets difficult." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The clock ticked behind him. We both heard it. "I don't want to lose you," he said finally. I stood and walked to the door. "You didn't lose me," I said. "You stepped away." When he left, he didn't ask for a hug. He picked up the bag, hesitated, then set it back down. I watched from the doorway as he walked to his car and drove off without looking back. I closed the door and reached for my notebook, ready to finish what I'd started. The envelope came on a Thursday. No return address, but the handwriting gave her away, sharp, slanted, too neat to be sincere. I opened it at the kitchen counter, letting the kettle finish its slow whistle before I unfolded the page. No greeting, no apology. Just a numbered list. 1 silk robe from guest room closet. 2 skincare drawer contents. 3 full-length mirror, originally hers. 4 sound machine gift from a colleague. I folded the paper neatly and slipped it back into the envelope. I didn't respond. Not with a letter, not with a call. Some things didn't deserve an answer. Instead, I logged into the security system. Finally set it up the way Silas always wanted. A code only I knew. Motion lights added near the driveway. Emergency contact changed from Connor to my banker, Marcia Klein. She was kind, efficient, and didn't ask questions she already knew the answers to. That night, I went to the hall closet to pull out a blanket for the laundry. My hand brushed against something soft, wedged between the coats. A cream cardigan. I recognized it. Mallory wore it during her early morning meditation routines, sitting on my couch with her knees tucked up and her earbuds in. She always left the sleeves half rolled, like the rules didn't apply to fabric either. I held it for a moment, not with anger, just clarity. No scent, no lingering emotion, just cloth. I folded. It walked to the hallway and dropped it into the donation bag I'd been slowly filling all week. A pair of mugs. A set of white ceramic plates that chipped too easily. A vase I never chose. I tied the bag tight and set it by the door. No note, no message, just closure in a black plastic knot. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I swept the entryway and watered the fern that had started coming back to life. Then I made a list of everything still worth keeping and every quiet way I'd protect it. I walked the hallway barefoot that morning. The floor creaked where it always had beneath the third plank, past the coat rack, under the corner near the pantry, where Silas once dropped a jar of apricot preserves. Those sounds didn't startle me anymore. They greeted me. In the kitchen, I toasted a slice of bread and sat by the window. The tree outside had begun to shed. Thin leaves drifted across the yard like they knew the season had changed without needing to be told. I ate slowly. No rush. No voices coming from the upstairs hallway. No perfume hanging too thick in the air. No one adjusting the thermostat because the draft makes her sinuses tight. Just warmth. Quiet. Me. After the dishes were washed and the counter wiped, I went to the file drawer in the back room, the one I hadn't touched since the visit to Leonard's office. I pulled out the folder labeled Property, Personal, and Legal, slid a blank sheet of paper inside, and wrote in firm black ink, "This house is not an inheritance. It is a memory with walls. It is not owed. It is not borrowed. It is mine." I folded the paper in thirds, tucked it behind the deed, and closed the folder. No ceremony. No final flourish. Just truth laid down where it belonged. The rest of the day moved without friction. I swept the porch, fed the neighbor's cat who'd taken to stopping by, read a few chapters of a book I'd once abandoned for lack of stillness. That stillness had come back. When night fell, I went room to room, turning off the lights. I didn't do it quickly. I paused in each space. The living room where Silas used to hum under his breath. The den where I'd once heard Connor's first full sentence. The kitchen, always the kitchen. I stood at the front door last. Checked the lock. It clicked into place without resistance. Not a performance. Just security. Just mine. No one watched. No one applauded. But nothing was missing. And finally I slept.